real problems in terms of keeping the team focused, keeping them motivated, keeping them performing. It is challenging at the moment. You've got to constantly be on your feet, I think.
Totally agreed. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the SaaS Sales Performance Podcast, the go-to show for uncovering the strategies behind world-class revenue teams. In today's episode, we're joined by another fantastic guest. We're joined by Ariane Riddell. Ariane is the Chief Sales Officer at Personal Group, and Ariane has a proven track record of leading teams through change, from process overhauls to mindset shifts. Ariane is going to bring a refreshing people-first perspective into today's conversation. So really looking forward to diving in and hearing some insights from the trenches. Another fantastic leader. Ariane, welcome onto the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Really looking forward to the conversation today and appreciate you taking the time. The theme of this current series is all around transformation, and you and I were just chatting offline before we joined around how many organizations are going through transformation. I mean, it feels like to some extent, whether you're a small venture capital backed startup or a large one of the big tech companies, it feels like everyone's undergoing some form of transformation at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's tough out there for a lot of businesses, and whether you're in the US or whether you're in the UK, there's a lot of regulatory change and pressures on businesses, and I think it's making it really tough, right, particularly for sales teams. And I know there are a lot of verticals and a lot of industries at the moment that are unfortunately going through huge restructures and reducing those sizes of those teams, and that's really challenging, motivating, and keeping your team focused in those kind of situations. And then for other businesses, it's about redefining your proposition and how you show up and how you kind of change in that perspective. And that, again, can cause real problems in terms of keeping the team focused, keeping them motivated, keeping them performing. It is challenging at the moment. You've got to constantly be on your feet, I think.
Totally agreed. And really looking forward to jumping into some of those topics today. Before jumping into that, Ariane, I mean, I'd love to just take a step back and learn a little bit more about your journey into revenue leadership so far. I mean, I love the phrase that I know a mutual connection of ours, Ollie Sharp, uses, where he talks about the LinkedIn mafia.
I know that
you're part of that alumni network. Yeah. I must say that having worked with a number of LinkedIn alum as clients and as partners, the revenue leaders that have been born out of that LinkedIn world all seem to have a really great people first leadership approach. But yeah, we'd love to obviously hear your journey. I mean, obviously you spent some time at LinkedIn.
I did, and LinkedIn was, I guess, quite pivotal in my career. So pre-LinkedIn, so I've done about, I hate to say it, around 28 years now in sales. I've always been in sales roles, and pre-LinkedIn, I was a very media focused. So I worked my way up from classified advertising in a magazine called Leisure Week, when trade magazines were still a thing, and worked in magazines for a long time, worked for the BBC for 6 or 7 years, and then obviously got to a point in my career where, saw that magazines is a managing decline, really as the whole kind of world moves into a more digital kind of mindset and the way that they consume media. And from there jumped into LinkedIn, and that was my kind of move into the digital space, which actually led to where I am now, which is in the SaaS space, actually. And I think without that LinkedIn piece in the middle, it would have been very difficult to make the jump from media sales and advertising sales to what I do now, which is obviously, far more process driven SaaS sales, which I love. But LinkedIn was that linchpin, I think, in that journey. And I spent 7 years at LinkedIn and did several jobs from, kind of leading sales teams to what we called our sort of business development team, really, which was running global agency relationships and looking at scalable things that we could do with LinkedIn. So how did these big agency groups use our data and our insight products and things like that? But yeah, you're right, actually. And it was an interesting time at LinkedIn. I joined when there was about 50 or 60 people in the UK, along with people like Ollie Sharp and a lot of the other guys that you will have worked with. And during the kind of 7 years I was there, I think it grew to 4,000 people in the UK. So we all worked at LinkedIn during a stage of kind of real hyper growth. And actually, one of the things that you need to do when you're in hyper growth is really show up for the people and be people first, because it is constant transformation when you're growing at that kind of speed. LinkedIn was very, very clear on its culture and its values and its mission, and that drove through absolutely everything that you did at LinkedIn. And I think it was a really good basis into leadership for me. Actually, I learned a lot of the principles that I employ now within that business, whether I've started off as an account director and moving up to a kind of global agency lead. But the way that they embed that culture and those vision and those values through the business is something that's always stayed with me. And then from there, jumped into SaaS tech and did 2 or 3 years at FIFO, which is a ratings and reviews platform and technology stack. And from there, jumped into the personal group, which is, in the kind of employee benefits space and the sort of financial protection. So the personal group, it's almost like a full service business, which I really like. So you've got a consultancy arm, so you can come in and you can advise businesses on what should your pay, structure look like, what should your benefit proposition look like. We then have a platform called Happy, which allows you to consolidate and house all those benefits in one easy to reach platform and space. And then we're also an insurance business. So we have low cost financial protection insurance policies, so we can actually help enhance what that benefit proposition looks like. And so that's what we take to market. And within the personal group, I run what you'd say, I guess, our client facing team. So I look after our customer success team, our new business team, partnerships, and implementation.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to learning more. You mentioned something there which I thought was particularly interesting when you were talking about your LinkedIn journey around the importance of embedding the vision and those values. And this is a theme that I'm hearing from the market in terms of the transformation journey and how important those are in terms of how you're bringing the team on that journey with you.
I completely agree. And actually, I've been at the personal group, just to manage expectations, for about 3 months. So I'm certainly not an expert. We have 3 values there, and it's pace, passion, and professionalism. And, they run through the business in much the same way, the sort of 7 values at LinkedIn, which were things like act like an owner, results driven, clients first type things. But everything we do in the business in terms of our reward, in terms of recognition, is it pace? Is it passion? Is it professionalism? And it runs through the DNA of the company. And I think it's really important because it gives people really clear focus on what's expected and how to show up. And so, they're well defined at the personal group. And also good ones. I quite like them. I think they're good ones.
3 Ps. Something else we're hearing a lot of at the moment, Ariane, is that that new vision that's set out as part of that transformation journey and where you're trying to get to, and those values don't necessarily work for all team members, right? How have you found navigating those conversations with perhaps, team members that may have been around in the organization quite a long time who, perhaps aren't on board with the vision or the newly defined vision of where you're trying to get to?
It's really difficult, actually. And, and it is hard, I think, for people that have been in businesses for a long time and are used to doing things a certain way, and you get new leadership or a new CEO in and, everything gets turned on its head. And I think the classic sort of textbook way to approach it. But I think being able to define why the change is happening, why you're putting in place these new values or product proposition or pricing or whatever part of the business it is, being able to really clearly define why you're doing it and how that maps to the business goals that you're trying to achieve. It's like tell people, tell them again, tell them again, tell them again. It's that constant reinforcing of that. And I think when people understand why something is happening, it's a lot easier to get on board with it. I think also understanding how it impacts them personally, and also the benefit and the growth opportunities and development and career opportunities that change of direction could put with that particular person or cohorts of people. I think as a leader, if you're going to be successful, you've got to have either your sales team or indeed the entire business all facing in the same direction and all buying into that vision. And I think sometimes people just won't buy into it. You do lose people along the way, sad to say. But again, it's getting people to the stage where they either buy it, they understand it, and they're going to support you, or helping them with making the decision that perhaps this isn't a place that they're going to thrive and flourish in. And it's just as important to me that people flourish and thrive as much as the business. And if somebody doesn't believe in the product or the proposition or whatever, I think the way I approach it is you have a responsibility to help them think about what it is they do want to see and where they might find that. And that's not, like brutally cutting people dead, but it's helping people make, and again, it's a LinkedIn term, next play. But if people aren't going to thrive and flourish and believe in the proposition, then it is very nub. They're not going to be happy in that role and that job. Luckily, I think very few people I think the majority of people, if you communicate in the right way with respect, with clarity, then I think the majority of people eventually come on board. I think it is a small minority that eventually think, you know what, this isn't for me.
Term that another customer of mine shared with me last week, which I've really liked, that echoes this theme, is he said to me, Matt, we're going to love them up or love them out.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting that, actually. That's really nice. Yeah, exactly. But as long as you do everything with respect and kindness and, people first. Yeah, I like that very much.
Ariane, you are in the third month, so a lot spoken about in terms of those kind of first 90 days. You're on a transformation journey, new leader to role. Give us a little bit of insight, if you can, into what are the big things on that list for your first 90 days? Like there's lots of fires to be put out, there's lots of trees to cut down. How have you gone about prioritizing?
So, that's a really interesting question, right? Because you turn up at a new job with your 30, 60, 90 already written up. Your first 30 days are about accelerated learning, and your second 30 days are about getting out externally and finding out what's going out in the market, and your third 30 days are about impact and doing things. And actually it very rarely plays out with that, because suddenly you're mixing and matching everything. The personal group has grown really quickly, and what I inherited in a sales organization was a business with very little foundations there. So we've had to really kind of go back to basics and look at process optimization, people development, and tech enablement, and what they need from a leadership perspective. So that there was very little kind of process in place. So we've had to define what that sales process looks like. We've had to look at the narrative and how we're showing up and what we're selling and how we're selling. And, my kind of first impressions were they were selling in a very product-led way versus a very benefit-led way. So what's the proposition? What are our USPs? What do people care about? We've implemented Salesloft, which is a sales enablement platform. We've implemented Walnut because we've got a demo platform that's great, but has all the usual problems of a demo platform. It's laggy. Sometimes it doesn't work. Everyone's sharing the same demo. You can't personalize. You can't put data in. So, we've invested in a demo platform. I've looked at scaling up the sales team in order to get a different skill set to support the existing team in there as well. I'm recruiting for a head of new business because, we don't have that at the moment. And obviously I have lots of different facets to my role. And at the moment I've been pulled into doing the job of a head of a new business, and I need somebody in place for that. But so we've looked at process. We've looked at what do the team need. We've had to look at sales collateral. We've created a new creds deck. We've created new 101. We've worked closely with marketing to redefine what we've needed. We've looked at the enablement from a tech perspective. I mean, it's literally been across the board. What do we need to do? And I think we were talking about it at another time. The difficulty of that is there's so much to do. It's difficult to prioritize. The advantage of that is every time you make a change, we're seeing the incremental improvements of it. And when you put that back into your people, that's really motivating the team, because suddenly they're saying, oh, this new creds deck is actually really landing my messages well with the client. And actually, when I talk about the simplicity of our system and how it's got on our platform and how it's got everything we need and nothing you don't, that's a really nice narrative when we're up against a massive market leader that has all the bells and whistles in their platform that actually a lot of businesses don't want. And actually, now I'm using Salesloft, I can really manage my day, and it's making my life easier because it's surfacing through AI what the most important activities I need to do. So that's really lovely. So we're seeing the results on the pipeline, but I'm also seeing the results in the sales team as well and how they're embracing this stuff.
That makes a ton of sense, Ariane. And it sounds like there's kind of 4 themes that you talked through there of process, people, product.
And leadership as well, actually, if you want a 5th one. Like, when you come into a business like that in a role like mine, you've got to define your credibility really quite quickly. And again, as I said to you, I need that team following me, my vision. I need them all facing the same way. I need them all supporting each other. And so coming in and actually showing people that you can do it and that you've got that experience as well is something that I lean into a lot. That the kind of relationship building in those early weeks and months across the team and the business is really, really important, because I want them to buy my vision. I want them to believe in what I believe in and the things I think we can achieve.
You spoke there about hiring a newer profile of team member and bringing in some kind of new ways of doing things. And oftentimes what we hear from clients going on this transformation journey in the early days is you often inherit a team where there's maybe kind of pockets of success. So there's maybe a handful of sellers that are succeeding, and there's something that looks like a bit of a blueprint that you can work with.
Yeah.
How have you gone about thinking about the profile of those incoming hires you need to go to market and bring in?
Yeah, it's a good question. So again, I came into a business that wasn't tracking data. So the one thing that I've started to get delivered to me, really basic stuff, right? Lead to op, percentage conversion, opt to win. What does it look like from an inbound perspective? What does it look like from outbound? What's the deal cycle length? And how does that map individually to the team members? And that's how I'm kind of looking and trying to replicate the success that I'm seeing. And I'm using data to lead that. I mean, essentially, it comes down to who's delivering the revenue, I guess, is the simplest way to look at it. But it's a really interesting one at the personal group because, the sales team have been operating with one arm behind their back in terms of the support that they've had across the business. There's been a big migration from a version 1 tech stack to a version 2. There's been a lack of collateral and marketing support, a lack of leads. So it's quite difficult to isolate, which is why you've got to kind of work on every single bit. But certainly we've got a mix in the team of people that know the industry inside out, like their knowledge of the kind of employee benefits space. They've got years and years of it, and they really, really get it. But they've been selling in a way that doesn't necessarily align with a SaaS sale, which is that kind of, there's a lot more process and a lot more structure and accountability in that piece, and they're not used to that. And then you've got some of the other people in the team that have previously embraced that way of working using the sales enablement and the tech enablement systems. So what I want to try and do is get the knowledge into the new people and get the process and the outbound strategies and the creative approach to lead gen into the guys that in essence have grown up in a world where leads kind of fly through the window. But once you hit a tipping point of a commoditized market and you're a challenger brand, those leads aren't going to fly through the window anymore. And we've got to start using all the modern tricks and tips and outbounding strategies to be able to drive those. So that's the skill set I'm going to bring in. And what I want is for those two cohorts to learn from each other.
It's a huge one that we're hearing at the moment, Ariane. Spot on. You're coming in, and obviously pipeline is one of those priorities in those first 90 days, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes you're inheriting a team that perhaps has benefited from historically a lot of inbounds, they've been fed a lot of pipeline. How do you break that mindset? How do you get them to embrace outbound and building their own?
It's really challenging. And we had the same scenario actually when I was at FIFO. They are two very similar challenges that I'm facing, because both those industries have had legacy people that have been with the business a long time, and almost I kind of refer to it as the glory days, when they were kind of first movers into this space. It's really, really challenging actually, and I don't know that there is one particular strategy that works across the board. I think this is where you really have to dive into motivation and individual personalities and how they like to work, and actually create strategies that work for them individually. Now that's easy for me to do because the teams that I've run aren't in the hundreds and the thousands, and I'm not sure how you would do it. I think you would need your second or third line managers to start doing that. But again, it's to the piece we came to at the beginning, right? Around love them in or love them out. Some people will never embrace it. It's not in their nature. They don't want to be doing the cold calling. They don't want to do the outbounding. Now, if you're big enough to have an inbound team and an outbound team, then that problem goes away. But I certainly haven't worked for businesses that have the luxury of being able to have two teams of that size. So again, it's clear KPIs around what your expectations are. It's being able to measure the output. Again, one of the reasons why we use Salesforce at FIFO, and I've implemented Salesforce here, is so we can track what's going on and help by making suggestions and understand, and also learning across the team. If somebody's got really good cadences that are really hitting the nail, what is it about them? How does everybody else use them? So it's about giving them that support. It's about giving them the training and the role playing and the coaching to be able to pick up that phone and try and make that connection in 30 seconds. But at the end of the day, people are either going to embrace that or they're going to want to do something slightly different.
Right. And if you've been living off, if you've had your food cooked for you and delivered to your doorstep for a number of years, and then all of a sudden you're being asked to get in the kitchen and make your food every day, it's
really hard. My 12-year-old son does not like it. We're going through that at home at this very time, and when he does go and make it, he leaves a complete mess. So there's another analogy there. but I strongly believe in the economic culture that we're in and the economic climate that we're in. I strongly believe that all sales teams need to embrace an outbound mentality. That's the only thing. Leads are great, right? They're amazing. We love them. We work hard to get them. And when we get them, we need to nurture them and grow them. But the only thing a sales team can be a master of their own destiny is in outbound. It's the thing they have control over. And that's the thing that I truly believe everybody has to bring to the table in this day and age, because I just don't think you can rely on a marketing team to throw you leads, not because that marketing team isn't capable, but because there's got to be a mix of both these days.
I love it. I think that's such an important point to hit home. And there's so many leaders out there that I'm speaking to on a daily basis who are struggling with this exact problem. So I think those insights that we shared today are going to be super valuable.
Yeah, it is really hard, but it's also showing them that it can work. That's the other key piece, right? As soon as you start to see success from those activities, then it becomes a lot easier. And that's where I think the knowledge sharing across teams really works, and being able to share what's working over here and how do we apply it over here to this different vertical or perhaps this different target audience, but actually, supporting them to get success, and then they roll with it.
I'll just add to close up on this point. We're not seeing this exclusively as a sales problem. We're also seeing this in post-sales as a big challenge for lots of organizations who have maybe got reactive customer success or account management functions, and trying to get them to build that commercial muscle to proactively go and seek new opportunities in their accounts is a huge problem in the market.
Yeah, and again, I obviously lead our customer success team as well, and they are in our business. The customer success team is responsible for cross-sell, upsell, land and expand, and generating leads that then get thrown over to the new business team. But yeah, exactly, and it's I'm trying to really encourage a data-led approach. So the way I describe it and the way we've talked about it with this team and the strategy we've put in place is, top down and bottom up, right? So top down, what are the products that either we think resonate with clients the most or make us the most money, or are going to make our clients stickier in terms of their lifetime value? What are those? And then list every client that hasn't got them. And that's where you kind of need a bit of marketing support. What's the collateral? Get that out to every single client that hasn't got, for example, cycle to work, a salary sacrifice scheme, and then pick up the phone and start calling them. And don't wait till your QBR, and don't wait for this. You need to be in the moment. And that works as well as your bottom up strategy, which is, well, I've got client A, and I know that these are the business priorities for client A. I know these are the outcomes they're trying to achieve, and I know these are the challenges they've got. So how do I map my product base to what I know from an intelligence perspective? And actually, you need to do both, and you need to be doing it at pace.
Yeah, that's a great framework for how to think about effective outbound there. And just the final piece on is also the channel. I'm hearing a lot of question marks from leaders around, is a phone-led strategy still the best way? Our execs kind of obviously heard a lot in the press and media this week with Apple's announcement of previewing.
Yeah, yes, I also read that. Do you know, and I honestly don't have an answer for that. And I think I'm probably too early in the journey at personal group to have an opinion, because I do actually think there are nuances by market for this sort of thing. You know,
For sure,
we are
yeah.
targeting at the personal group HRD, chief people officers, HR teams. You know, up till this point in my career, we've been targeting marketeers. Now, are marketeers more likely to pick up the phone and engage in a conversation than someone that works in an HR team? I don't actually know the answer to that yet. We had some success at FIFO with outbound calling. And in fact, when we look at the kind of email marketing and the email outbound and cadencing that we did, the way I used to look at it was the emails are warming them up so that when you leave the phone message or they hear the phone, that they will actually take the call. So I've never seen cold calling work successfully with nothing to support it at all. I think you need effective brand marketing so they know who you are. And I think you need that second piece down around that kind of more nuanced, bespoke outreach that helps support the call. But certainly at FIFO, it was making the call that made the difference a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That actually got through, and the SDRs had quite a bit of success in that. I'm recruiting for SDRs at the personal group now, and we are gonna test that out. Whether or not it will work as a strategy, I don't know. It's all about test, learn, iterate, isn't it? And I'm in the very lucky position where I can try everything, you know, and I suspect 10 to 15% of it will work, and probably 80 to 85%, 90% won't work. But the bits that do will deliver us what we need, and we've got to try everything. A lot of salespeople will tell you it doesn't work, but I think a lot of salespeople don't like doing it. There are enough successful SDRs in the technology and SaaS world that my gut tells me if you do it properly and you do it smartly and you do it with support, that it should make a difference. When I started at the personal group, I obviously, you know, got my number onto a Cognizant or whatever, and I was called up by a data provider, and I answered the call. And you know what? I was in market for a data provider. So I said, look, actually, I do want to talk to you. I used your business in a previous role. I like the data set you've got. I think we need to look at it. I put them in touch with the data and the marketing team, and that is a conversation that's almost gone through its cycle now. And so you catch people at the right moment and they've got the right things that they're looking at, and it can be really powerful. That's not an answer. My gut tells me yes, but I think it's really, really hard and it needs support around the edge.
It's spot on. And the point you made at the beginning there, Ariane, I think is a really important one, in that the nuances of what effective outbound looks like, it's unique for everybody's business based on your persona, who you're selling to, the product, ticket size, etc. So I think that's something that's really important to bear in mind. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed the conversation today, Ariane. So thank you for coming on and sharing so many great insights on what that transformation journey looks like. I think, you know, some fantastic stuff, particularly around the importance of outbound as you're building that out, because seeing that as such a big focus for so many leaders. For listeners, you know, for fellow CROs, CSOs listening to this recording who, you know, would perhaps like to reach out and connect, assuming LinkedIn's a good place to do that.
It is. And look, let me just say thank you so much for inviting me on and having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and it's really interesting for me actually to get your perspective on, you know, you speak to lots and lots of sales leaders, and it's really interesting to hear the nuances or the agreement of the sort of things that we're facing and that other people are looking at the same sort of things. So I've very much enjoyed speaking to you. So thank you. And yes, please do connect on LinkedIn. That would be great.
Awesome. Ariane, thanks for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun. Look forward to doing it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Matt.